The other thing that I think people should start paying attention to is what these people are saying about Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So you had during the debate, Trump say, bad things happen in in Philadelphia. And then today he tweeted out that Philadelphia is out of control. Well, it turns out if you search for media reports over the past 2 weeks or so, you will be amazed at how many mainstream media reports refer to Philadelphia as ground zero, the epicenter of 2020, that the bullseye is moving over Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia is in the center of the bullseye and all of this stuff. I mean, it's really eerie, the words they're using to describe Pennsylvania. In Philadelphia specifically, you have Mother Jones with a picture of Pennsylvania literally on fire, but they're talking about in the article about vote counts, right? But they have Philadelphia literally on fire in the picture, and the headline is, "It's going to be hell." Okay, so this seems a little weird, right? For talking about vote counts, because the official thing that they're setting up with Philadelphia is that there's going to be confusion over the mail-in vote counts and that it's most likely to be an epicenter for fraud. But there is some really crazy shit going down in Philadelphia that has to do with my Cyber Reason series that I wrote in January. I wrote a 3-part series about this company called Cyber Reason and their simulations of a doomsday scenario for the 2020 election that they started doing a year ago. And they've done several since then. And basically, Cyber Reason is an Israeli intelligence front company. Their head guy used to be the offensive hacker of nation states for Israel's Unit 200, which is like Israel's NSA. He admits that his role at Cyber Reason is a continuation of his time at Unit 8200, where he was offensively hacking other countries. Okay, so this guy's in charge of this cybersecurity company. One of their main investors is Lockheed Martin, which, of course, long-standing ties not just to the military-industrial complex, but the intelligence community. For example, the first head of the CIA's InQtel was a Lockheed Martin top executive, among other things, right? So these guys are like very plugged in. They also have a major ex-guy from the CIA on their board of advisors, so they're definitely like in between that space of Israeli and U.S. intelligence where that meets. And so last November, they started simulating what they called Operation Blackout, which is, they were doing that with the DHS and the Secret Service, and I think some other agencies, but I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But they basically simulated complete chaos on the day of the 2020 election. And of course, this was before all of the chaos was actually visible. Starting in like July and August, pretty much everyone in America started to figure out, wow, it sure looks like the 2020 election is going to be a giant clusterfuck, huh? But basically, if you paid attention to what Cyber Reason was doing and what the U.S. intelligence community and what Israeli intelligence were saying last year, they told you this chaos was coming. Right. And they basically, if you look at these simulations, they essentially say that there's going to be a cyber 9/11 on election day. So that's basically my Cyber Reason series in a nutshell. And I went through in part 3 of that series all of these different mainstream media buzzwords that they used to seed that narrative for chaos last year. And so that's essentially how I was able to know, right, that it was going to be chaotic before the chaos was obvious a couple months later. So now we have that same type of buzzword seeding in the mainstream media narrative about Philadelphia, calling it ground zero, the epicenter, and all of this stuff. And it's not just like they're quoting the same guy and having, and that all these different reports are repeating the same quote from the same dude. It's all these different experts, these web of experts being quoted by these different outlets, like national outlets, local outlets, who are all at the same time all deciding to refer to Philadelphia with those terms, right? And then you have the fact that back in March, this top DHS official was saying, we are on every counterterrorism official I talked to here in the U.S. and among our foreign allies, I guess that means like the Five Eyes in Israel. They all believe that we're on the doorstep of another 9/11 and we can see it coming, but we can't quite stop it. That's what this top DHS lady told Congress in like March. I mean, there's definitely some crazy stuff going on, but what's really fucking crazy is that, we've heard this narrative over the past few months as the whole chaos thing has come out about, foreign hackers are going to hack critical infrastructure in the power grid and the election system and all of that stuff, which I also was also seeded last year too and predicted by Cybereason and this web of cybersecurity companies that are tied to either U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, or both. And it turns out that in Philadelphia this year, there have been 2 conferences so far, and there's a third one a week before the election. But the first 2, all 3 of them are sponsored by the same people. But the first 2 were about, the first one was about selling cybersecurity software to hospitals and critical infrastructure. And then the second one didn't have the focus on healthcare. It was just on, security, general stuff, all focused in Philadelphia. Cybereason was one of the sponsors of those conferences, but there's 2 companies that really got my attention. One of them is, this is just the craziest fucking shit ever. So like the main sponsor of these conferences is a company called Darktrace. And Darktrace is an AI cybersecurity company based out of the UK. You look at its board of advisors, it's the former director of MI5, British intelligence. And before that, before 9/11, he was, right before 9/11, his bio even says this, became the UK's intelligence community top international counter-terror guy, like 10 days before 9/11. Then under him, you have this guy, Alan Wade. And Alan Wade is someone that I've been waiting to write about because he's supposed to go in my series on the Maxwell family. He's the guy that co-founded Gilead with Christine Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, that became the big counterterrorism software after 9/11. He's also the guy, at the time he founded that company, he was chief information officer of the CIA. And at that time, before 9/11, chief information officer of the CIA meant you were the chief information officer of the entire U.S. intelligence community. And he was in that role on the day of 9/11. Okay? Then this is the guy that before he left, managed the whole CIA side of the rise of Palantir with Peter Thiel and In-Q-Tel and all of that shit. So that's who's in here with that company. This MI5 guy and Alan Wade, also Amber Rudd, the former, was a former cabinet minister in the Boris Johnson government involved with like counterterrorism stuff. You have the top, one of the top research guys at the Imperial College of London, and then some dude who calls himself the UK's answer to Bill Gates. That's who runs this company.
Yay!
Basically.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and what's crazy about them is that their AI cybersecurity system is unsupervised, meaning there's no people. They just created this AI thing and they let it run loose on your computer and it protects you. Okay, so what's crazy is that the Cambridge University mathematicians that developed this AI weren't trying to develop a cybersecurity program. They were trying to make the singularity. They were trying to make AI that has a sense of self. Okay, so like these guys at Cambridge wanted to make the singularity, okay, and then they get in bed with this dude at the CIA who was in bed with the Maxwell family and like the head of the software for the U.S. intelligence community on 9/11. Okay, they get in bed with that guy and the former director of MI5. That seems like a winning combination, and now they're marketing their software to Philadelphia, and the mainstream media is saying it's going to be ground zero and like the epicenter of all this stuff. I mean, it seems a little weird. Anyway, that's just one company. The other company that caught my attention is called, it's called Tenable, and the head of Tenable is a guy named Amit Yoran. And Amit Yoran used to be part of something called Guardium during 9/11 that was involved in, it was eventually bought by IBM, but it was run by Israeli intelligence guys, and it's tied up to this guy named Michael Goff. And Michael Goff, if you've ever looked into Christopher Berlin's research on 9/11, is the guy that wrote the P-TECH software, which people like James Corbett refer to as the 9/11 software. After 9/11, Amit Yoran, by Michael Chertoff, gets appointed to be head of cybersecurity at DHS. Amit Yoran, by the way, is an Israeli citizen that studied at West Point, so he's not even American. So anyway, he was put in charge of cybersecurity at DHS. He wasn't there that long, but ended up leaving. He also used to be in charge of In-Q-Tel and a bunch of other stuff. So his company is the other one. that's been selling all this stuff to Philadelphia and cities in the area and around the country, I guess, in the lead up to this claim that, Russia and Iran are going to hack these very systems that they're selling it to. And then you have Cyber Reason at these conferences as well, also supporting the people that predicted doom for the 2020 election. Definitely seems really, like I said, I broke my own brain.
Fucking nightmarish.